Greetings, I'm Herbert Erpaderp, and would you believe it, it's May Multi-Turret Modelling Madness Month.
Wasn't that in March, Herbert?
I'd just like alliteration, and I didn't want to leave this video sitting until next year. If you can't tell, this is the Japanese OI 150-ton super heavy tank from Finemolds. It's a 72nd scale kit. I did make a what's in the box video for this kit, so if you want to look at the sprues, go check that out, and then come right back here. No getting distracted now. The build begins with the whole bottom. Yours should be a little bit less blurry. There are 3 of these internal support doodads that should be installed, and they're all the same as each other, so you can put any one of them in any of the mounts. Such freedom. It seems like they might stay there with just friction alone, but gluing is a better choice because that will help you avoid getting smited by the glue god. These supports do a fantastic job of being there for the whole side parts, making it very simple to get them into place. You may need to apply a little bit of pressure, but I'm sure most of us can manage that. I do appreciate this. It makes getting the whole parts on nice and straight very easy, which in turn should help everything else be straight and neat. It probably makes it a bit stronger too, which is probably important. The whole front goes on next, and you can sort of see there's a couple of guides in there to help with positioning. It's a very good fit. Time to make some bogies, or as the instructions misspell them, boggies. Why yes, I am easily amused. These are pretty simple to assemble, just make sure you're putting the correct wheels on the right sides, and the left side too. I found it helpful to put the wheels on in steps. I glue the wheels onto one end of the bogie, then set them aside to bond while gluing the wheels onto the next one. This means I don't need to worry about nudging the first set of wheels out of place while attaching the second pair. Eventually all the bogies are done. There should be a total of 8. Next, I assemble the drive sprockets. This is about as easy as it looks, if you think it looks easy. If you think it looks difficult, you are wrong. In order to mount those sprockets, we first need these final drive housings. These are the same part for both sides of the hull. Well, both sides get their own part. They're both identical, is what I mean. The guide hole for the sprocket should be above the axle. The keying will help. The return rollers are installed next. These have both a guide pin and a square recess they should sit in. Unless you're really determined, you can't get this wrong. Probably. The swing arms for the bogies come next, and you'll probably have to pay a small amount of attention with these. There are 2 different parts, some of which will face toward the rear of the hull while the rest face forward. All you have to do is put the right parts in the right places, and bam, suspension arms installed. It made sense to follow this with the bogies. These have a sort of key-shaped axle mount, just in case you're having difficulty in figuring out which way up they should go. There is still a little bit of play in these parts, so you might have to do a bit of nudging so they're all nice and straight. Next, I glue together a pair of idler wheels, which is nice and easy. The idler wheels aren't much good without a mount though. The mount is made up of 2 pieces that sandwich around the idler. Idler sandwich. This goes together a little bit weirdly. I mean, it's not that weird, and it's certainly not difficult. It just kind of looks a bit odd with how the top part doesn't sit flat on the bottom part. It looks fine from the outside though, which is what matters. These brackety doovers come next. You can see they've conveniently got some return rollers moulded inside of them. Their most important function though is going to be holding the side plates on. Next, I install the drive sprocket. There's no polycap or anything here, but there is keying, and that should, hopefully, mean that the tracks will mesh with the drive sprocket and not cause any trouble. The idler wheel assemblies then go on the front of the hull with no issue at all. Now the running gear is ready for the tracks. And when you've stopped being a child, the tracks can be installed. I start with the nice long top run of tracks, though the instructions do say to start at the bottom. If you ask me, it makes far more sense to start here at the drive sprocket because, as you can see, I've got the teeth of the sprocket meshed with a couple of links here, which makes a really good starting point for getting all of the links in the right places. Starting at the bottom would involve more guesswork, which will most likely produce a worse result, or at least make the assembly a little bit more annoying, neither of which are especially desirable. The rest of the tracks are pretty easy to install. I add the single links around the drive sprocket, and then work my way down and around to the front. A bit of nudging and kajiggering was needed here and there, but nothing too extreme. Link and length tracks like these are so much better and easier to install when everything just lines up like this, thanks to keying. Thanks to Finemolds kit designer, really. I think the result is pretty good. It's almost a shame that a lot of these tracks will be hidden behind those huge side plates. The side plates do look pretty cool though, so it's fine. Next, the whole top is installed, and this almost dropped right into place. Pretty much everything in this kit so far has been a great fit. A little pressure and some extra glue is all you need, and you probably don't even really need the pressure. Next, I figured, why not drill the ends of the exhaust pipes? This makes them look a bit more like a pipe and not a solid rod. I then glue them into place in their little openings at the rear here, another very nice fit. There's a huge hole here, and I thought it might be fun to cover that with the rear plate, like so. This is yet another really nicely fitting part.
Are you going to say that every time?
Probably not, but I was quite impressed with this. I'm pretty sure I frequently had words to those effect on the live stream. By the way, if you want to watch me build kits like this one live, be sure to drop by my Twitch streams. Link in the description. The next thing I add is a couple of doodads here on the rear of the hull. They look like mounts for something. Whatever they are, the keying makes positioning them nice and easy. At the front of the hull, there's some headlamps. These mount into a small hole above the idler wheel, and tweezers will be your friends here. The side plates come next. The instructions wanted some more return rollers installed on the inside of these plates, but I said no, you've had enough. Really, I figured they wouldn't be visible, and it's a bit of extra work for not only no return, get it, return rollers, ha ha ha, but also, it seemed like there'd be a chance the extra return rollers would interfere with the tracks and become a hindrance, all for a part that would never be seen. I avoided that, and the hull side plates went into place nice and easy. Brackets for the towing shackles come next. I'm pretty sure I got these up the right way. There is a chance they could be upside down. The instructions want the shackles installed on the brackets before installing them onto the hull. I think the way I've done it is a bit easier, and therefore a better choice. The same with the rear brackets. These are different to the front brackets, and this time I'm a bit more sure I've got them on the right way up. On the engine deck there's a pair of plates, I guess you might call them. I've no idea what they are or what they do. Then I install the shackles. The ones on the rear needed a little bit of kajiggering, so they'll sit hanging downward as though gravity is doing gravity things to them. The ones on the front are a little bit easier because gravity is actually gravitying them. That's probably about all we need to do for the hull. Now it's time to start working on the many turrets. The two identical front turrets are first, and I begin those with the gun, which is glued into this little mounting. I don't think you would call it a mantlet. Whatever it is, once the gun is in place, the other half goes on like so. Then, the end of the gun is glued on, the business end. I couldn't quite tell which way around this gun tip should go, or even if there was a particular way that it should go. There's only a 50% chance I got it wrong. That's pretty good by Herbert standards. Next, the gun mount, or maybe you might call this the mantlet. These two small parts aren't difficult to glue together. There is a third, rear part of this assembly that I left off, mostly because it wasn't going to be visible. It wouldn't have been hard to install, I just didn't think there was a need for it. It would have allowed the gun to move if it was all glued together carefully, but I didn't need it, so I didn't do that. The gun assembly gets attached to the front of this. You can tell that I've got the gun a bit misaligned. I did nudge it back into place later though, so don't call the police. I assemble the cupola next, actually 4 of them. The assembly is exactly the same for all 4 turrets. The 2 ring parts are easy enough to put together, but be careful with the hatch part. It's possible to get this around the wrong way, which I did manage to do with the first one, though I didn't realise until later. What a fool I am. Next, I glue the gun assembly into the turret. There's a little recess for it. Without the rear part of the gun assembly though, the whole thing sat a bit too far back, though I didn't realise until after I'd installed the first turret side part. So I simply kajiggered the gun assembly a bit further forward, which, having not let the glue bond too much, wasn't especially hard. That's much better. I follow that with the other turret side, and then the rear part. The keying makes getting all of these parts into place nice and easy, which is exactly what keying should do. The roof goes into place easily too, though it did need a little bit of pressure. The cupola, is it really a cupola, or is it simply a hatch? Doesn't really matter, does it? What does matter is that it goes into place here, and the keying has forced me to have the hatch around the wrong way.
Oh sure, blame the keying.
I do. I intentionally installed the hatch on the other front turret around the wrong way so they would match. I also corrected the gun at this time, so that makes up for my hatch crimes. This is the gun for the main turret. It also has a separate tip, and this one was easier to get around the right way. I could tell which way it was meant to be by looking at it. It gets sandwiched in the middle of a much larger version of the casing thing, whatever it is, like the smaller guns have. The mounting part is also similar to the smaller turrets, and like the smaller one, I omitted the rear part, mostly because it wasn't going to be seen. And again, I don't need the gun to elevate or depress, so I glue it all solidly in place. Installing the gun into the turret floor is a little bit different than the smaller turrets. The absence of the gun's rear part has no impact here, and it lines up with the turret sides very nicely. The left and right sides both go into place with next to no effort. You do still have to put a little bit of effort in, but the keying does make it very easy. At risk of repeating myself, the rear part of the turret goes on with next to no effort as well. The roof doesn't quite just drop right into place. I did have to apply some pressure, especially at the left rear, but it did go together pretty well. The hatch assembly goes into place next. This one's been put together the correct way. I'm hoping this will get me some leniency in the Supreme Court of Model Assembly. The loader's hatch goes into the other opening, and obviously this is installed in such a way that the hinge parts line up with the hinge parts on the turret roof. Then this, I guess it's an ammo hoist, whatever it is, it's installed here. And with that, the main turret is completed. But wait, there's more. The small rear turret is totally different to the rest of them. This is the mantlet, and for this one, installing the turret sides before the gun part is the way to go. There's nothing that actually says it's the way to go, it just seemed a bit easier. This turret also has no rear part. I mean, it does have a rear, it's included with the side parts though. Installing the front is quite easy, it just needs a little pressure and it's on. Same thing with the roof. The rear turret has a pair of machine guns, or what I assume are machine guns. They could just be small cannons. Whatever the case may be, there are 2 barrels, and they did take a bit of nudging to get into place, but it's nothing too difficult. And would you look at that, another hatch, exactly the same as the other 3. And you'll notice, Your Honour, that this one is also the right way around. I then use the convenient locking tab mechanism to install the turret. And then I install the turret. And then I install the turret, and then I install the turret. The main turret was a little bit of a tight fit, and it took some effort to get it to rotate, but that's okay. We don't need to rotate it all the time, and it sits properly without falling off. And there we have it. The 72nd scale OI 150-ton super heavy tank from Finemolds is complete, and what an awesome beast it is. This thing is the size of some 35th scale tanks. Small ones, granted, but it is quite big. Just wait until you see this thing in 35th scale. Anyway, I'm pretty happy with how it's turned out. This is the first Finemolds kit that I've ever seen, and based off this, I wouldn't hesitate to buy another of their offerings. It's a great representation of an unusual and, in my opinion, very interesting vehicle. I'm no OI surgeon, or any kind of surgeon, fortunately, so I can't tell you if it's 100% historically accurate, though I do understand that Finemolds had access to some plans or blueprints or some such, and because the real thing was scrapped, that's probably about as good as you're going to get. It looks really good to me and my non-rivet counter eyes, and at least for me, that's what matters. The parts are quite nicely moulded and well engineered, so pretty much everything goes together nice and easily with no fighting. Some parts did need a little bit of pressure-based convincing, but I wouldn't consider that a fight, and you will find that in a lot of other good, well-made kits too. All of that made for an enjoyable build. It did take me a couple of streams, so it is a little bit more than a quick afternoon build, but it wasn't especially complicated or time-consuming. I rather enjoyed it. I give it several thumbs up.
How many thumbs do you have?
Several. Anyway, if you're looking for an OI, well, you probably don't really have all that many options, but this is a good one. If you've got any questions or comments, feel free to put them in the comments section below. If you'd like to watch me build kits like this one live, I live stream my modelling a couple of times a week on Twitch. There's a link in the description, so drop by and say hi. Subscribe if you want to see more of this kind of thing, and share the video with anybody you think might find it helpful. And if you really like what I do, consider supporting on Patreon or Ko-fi. Take care of yourselves, be excellent to each other, and thanks for watching. Farewell.